My name is Rachel Turner. I'm 29 years old, and I live in a tiny two-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio. By day, I juggle shifts at the diner downtown. By night, I'm a mother, sometimes exhausted, sometimes terrified, but always trying. And if you ask anyone in my neighborhood about me, they'd tell you one thing. Rachel is too trusting. Maybe they're right. Maybe I've trusted too many promises, too many smiles that never lasted. But I never imagined that being trusting would make me the punchline of my life. It happened at the laundromat on East Main Street, under those buzzing fluorescent lights that hum like angry bees. I was folding my daughter's pink pajamas, the ones with the unicorns faded from too many washes, when I overheard it. Two women at the next machine, their voices cutting through the air like knives. "She can't even keep the lights on," one said, smirking. The other giggled. "Single mom, no husband, no savings. Always one late bill away from eviction." And then they looked at me. With pity. With amusement. I froze. The pajama top slipped from my hands. For a moment, I felt like I was 12 years old again. Awkward, invisible, and desperate to disappear. But here's the truth I want you to hear. I didn't disappear, because just a few weeks later, the very thing they mocked me for became the stage for my revenge. They laughed at a single mom struggling to pay rent. They weren't laughing when a billionaire's name appeared on the note taped to my door. And when I saw it, I froze. Columbus winters bite in ways you don't expect. It's not just the cold. It's the kind of damp, gray chill that seeps into your bones and lingers long after you shut the door. The streets outside my apartment were slick with freezing rain that night, reflecting the dull yellow of the street lamps. Inside, the air smelled faintly of burnt toast. I had scraped together a cheap dinner, hoping my daughter wouldn't notice the taste. That's the backdrop of my story: cheap meals, dim lights, and neighbors who thought my life was their entertainment. But it's also the story of how a note, one simple note, carried a name that turned my world upside down. I'll tell you everything. Every cruel laugh, every sleepless night, and every detail of the note that changed my life. But before I do, let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted the wrong person? So much that when they betrayed you, you blamed yourself first? If you've ever carried that shame, stay with me. Because my story might sound too close to yours. That night, as I tucked my daughter into bed and kissed her forehead, I thought tomorrow would be just another struggle. Another day of counting tips, dodging whispers, and trying not to drown in bills. I had no idea that when morning came, there would be an envelope on my door. I had no idea that inside was a name so powerful it made my knees buckle. No idea that the very people who laughed at me would soon be left speechless. To the audience, voice breaking. And that's where my revenge began. My story didn't start with an envelope on the door. It started long before that, years before, when I was just a little girl in a small Ohio town, chasing fireflies in the summer air and pretending that life was kinder than it really was. I grew up in a two-story house with peeling paint and a sagging porch swing. On summer nights, the boards creaked under our weight as I sat with my little brother, watching the neighbors' houses glow with laughter and warm dinners. Inside ours, it was different. My father left when I was 9. I remember the slam of the door more than the sound of his truck starting. My mother sat at the kitchen table afterward, staring at an empty cup of coffee as if she could will him back with silence. From then on, everything felt thinner. Meals, smiles, even the air in that house. My mom worked 2 jobs, cashier by day, janitor by night. I thought it made her strong. But sometimes when she was too tired to notice I was awake, I saw her cry into her hands. That image lodged itself in me. I promised myself, one day I'll build a life where no one has to cry over bills. But promises made in childhood are fragile. In high school, I worked at a grocery store after classes. bagging produce with hands that smelled like oranges and detergent. The money went to help Mom, but I also tucked away little scraps of it, dreaming of college, of getting out. Then came Ethan, the boy with the crooked smile who said he loved the way my hair smelled after long shifts. I was 17. He was 19. He had nothing to offer except attention, and I thought that was enough. It wasn't. By 19, I was pregnant. By 20, I was alone. Ethan left with the same easy shrug my father once had. No goodbye, no apology, just gone. I held my daughter, Emily, for the first time on a rainy March morning. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and wet earth carried in through the window. She was, her fists clenched tight like she already knew the world could be cruel. And in that moment, I wasn't just Rachel. I wasn't just the girl who trusted too much. I was a mother. But motherhood came with its own soundtrack. The shuffle of overdue bills, the beep of declined cards, and the whispers of neighbors. Too young, too naive. Another single mom with nothing to show. I worked every shift I could. Diner, gas station, babysitting. My hands cracked from bleach and dish soap. My feet ached from standing. But Emily always had a warm blanket and a kiss goodnight. That mattered more than my exhaustion. Still, my flaw followed me like a shadow. I trusted people I shouldn't have have. Landlords who said, "Don't worry, you can pay next week." Friends who borrowed money with promises to pay it back. Even Ethan, when he said he'd send child support, soon never came. And every time, I told myself it was my fault for believing them. There were moments too. Don't think there weren't. Summer evenings when Emily and I sat on the fire escape, sharing a popsicle while the sun dipped behind the buildings. She'd giggle when the juice dripped down her chin, and for a moment the world felt almost right. But beneath that sweetness was always unease, the kind that seeps into you when you know rent is due, the fridge is half empty, and payday is still 3 days away, the kind that whispers, "What if you fail her?" Columbus can be a strange place. Downtown, glass towers rise like promises too big to keep. But just a few blocks away, the sidewalks crack, the corner stores close, and people like me scrape by, invisible. That's where I was, caught between the glitter of what could be and the gray of what was. And people noticed. They always do. They noticed the second-hand clothes, the dented car that coughed smoke in the cold. They noticed Emily's backpack, faded, patched at the corners, and instead of kindness, they gave us laughter. But here's the thing about laughter when you're the target. It doesn't just sting. It grows inside you. It becomes fuel. I didn't know it then, but every whisper, every smirk, and every mocking glance was planting the seed of something bigger. Something that would bloom the day a billionaire's name appeared on a folded note. The thing about betrayal is that it never walks in wearing a mask. It comes in small ways, so small you almost excuse it, until one day you realize you've been drowning, and the people you trusted most were the ones holding you under. It started with the neighbors. When I first moved into that crumbling brick apartment, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd found a place where Emily and I could breathe. The rent was manageable. The landlord, Mr. Green, shook my hand and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I give single moms a break." I smiled, relieved. But weeks later, the cracks showed. He'd stop me in the hallway, eyes flicking down my body in a way that made my skin crawl. "You're a girl," he'd say. "Pretty girls always land on their feet." I'd force a smile, clutch Emily's hand tighter, and hurry inside. I should have seen it then, that his kindness wasn't free. At the diner, the gossip was worse. Co-workers whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. "She's always tired. Probably another bill collector after her." My cousin said she saw her begging the landlord for more time. They never asked if I was okay. They just fed on the story of the struggling single mom like vultures circling a carcass. Even customers joined in. One night, a group of college kids left a tip, pennies scattered across the table with a note, "Buy yourself a life." I picked up the coins with trembling hands, my face hot with shame. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I smiled at the next table like nothing had happened, because that's what I always did. But the deepest cuts came from family. They were supposed to be my safe place. My sister Melanie was 3 years older. Married, stay-at-home mom, 2 kids. At Thanksgiving, she looked at Emily's worn shoes and smirked. "Maybe if your mom worked harder, you could get sparkly ones like your cousins." The whole table chuckled. Even my mother shook her head. "Rachel," she sighed, "you always were too soft. Life isn't going to hand you anything." I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. They didn't see the hours I worked, the nights I skipped dinner so Emily could eat, or the times I lay awake counting pennies. All they saw was what I lacked. Then came the moment that should have warned me, loud, clear, undeniable. I was 3 days late on rent. I knocked on Mr. Green's office door, paycheck in hand. He looked at me, at the envelope, and said, "Too late. Fees are already stacking." I begged. "Please, it's all I have right now. Just 3 days." He leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You know, there are other ways you could make it up." My stomach dropped. My skin went cold. I grabbed Emily's hand and left without another word. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, shaking. I wasn't just battling bills anymore. I was battling predators. Looking back, I wonder why I didn't fight harder then. Why didn't I scream, or leave, or burn the whole building down with my fury? I had no power. I thought survival meant silence, and silence, it is the easiest thing to betray. One afternoon, I came home to find Emily crying on the couch. Her cheeks were red, her little fists clenched. "What's wrong, baby?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She sniffled. "At school, they said we're poor. They said you can't even pay rent." My chest tightened. "Who told you that?" She shrugged. "Their moms talk. They laugh. They said, 'We don't belong here.'" I pulled her into my arms, my throat burning. In that moment, something inside me cracked wide open. It wasn't just me anymore. They weren't just mocking Rachel, the too trusting girl who always fell behind. They were mocking my daughter. And that, I couldn't forgive. That night, as Emily slept with her tear-stained cheeks pressed against her pillow, I sat in the dark, staring at the peeling wallpaper. My family had mocked me. My neighbors had laughed. My landlord had tried to corner me. I didn't know it yet, but the universe was about to answer back. Because within days, there would be an envelope on my door. And inside, a name so powerful, it would make everyone who doubted me choke on words. That was the day their betrayal began to turn into my revenge. Betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just seeps in. Quietly, slowly, until you realize every corner of your life is damp with it. I stopped sleeping. Nights stretched long and brittle, filled with the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of cars splashing through icy puddles outside my window. I would lie in bed beside Emily, watching her chest rise and fall, her little arms sprawled across the blanket, and all I could think was, she's better than this. Better than me. I'd close my eyes and see Mr. Green's smirk, my sister's smirk, and those women at the laundromat. Laughter. Always laughter. Sharp, cruel, echoing in my skull. Sometimes I pressed a pillow over my head to muffle it, but you can't muffle the voices that live inside you. The bills piled higher. Colored envelopes, red for overdue, yellow for warning, were scattered across my kitchen table like confetti from a cruel party. I would open them with trembling hands, skim the words, then fold them neatly and stack them again. As if organizing my despair made it smaller. One night I found myself talking to them, out loud. Not today, Electric. You'll have to wait. Rent, I'll figure you out somehow. I laughed bitterly at myself, alone in that dim kitchen. Shame became my second skin. At the diner, when I refilled coffee cups, I felt the weight of customers' eyes. Were they looking at my uniform, faded, stained, or at me? Did they whisper about the tips I counted too carefully, or the leftover pie I wrapped to take home? At Emily's school, when I dropped her off, I kept my head down. Other moms stood in their perfect coats, their shiny cars waiting at the curb. Their smiles were weapons, polite, pitying, cutting. "Rachel, you're doing so well," one mother said once, her tone dripping with sweetness. I smiled, thanked her, and went home to an empty fridge. I stopped answering calls, stopped visiting family, stopped inviting anyone into my apartment. The wallpaper peeled, the carpet is stained, and I thought, if no one sees it, maybe it isn't real. But it was. One Friday night, Emily wanted to watch a movie. We curled up on the couch under our one thick blanket, but halfway through the lights flickered and died. The power was gone. Emily's wide eyes filled with tears. "Mommy?" I swallowed hard. "It's just the power company making a mistake. I'll fix it." But inside, my heart cracked. I couldn't even keep the lights on for her. We lit a candle, the wax dripping slowly, the shadows dancing across the wall. And in that flickering light, I whispered to myself, maybe they're right. Maybe I really am useless. The cruelest voice wasn't my neighbor's or my family's. It was mine. It told me I was failing. It told me Emily would grow up resenting me. It told me I was invisible, unworthy, and disposable. I would stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m. and imagine disappearing. Not dying, just fading out. Like a photograph left in the sun until nothing remained. One morning, after another night of no sleep, I sat at the kitchen table staring at a half-written note. It wasn't a goodbye note. Not exactly. It was a list. Names of people Emily could stay with if I couldn't manage anymore. I wrote Melanie first, my sister, then crossed it out. I wrote Mom, then crossed it out too. Tears blurred the page. There was no one. I crumpled it and threw it away. Then I washed my face, put on my uniform, and walked to the diner like nothing happened. Because collapse doesn't always look like screaming. Sometimes it looks like pretending. But here's the thing about collapse. When you've fallen far enough, even the smallest hand reaching out can feel like salvation. I didn't know it then, but my quiet unraveling was almost over. Because the next chapter of my life, the part no one saw coming, was about to begin. And it started with a single envelope taped to my door. When you've fallen as far as I had, sometimes the smallest gesture feels like a miracle. For me, it came on a Tuesday morning in January. I woke to the sound of Emily's laughter. She was at the door, holding something white in her small hands. "Mommy! Someone left us mail." I frowned. We never got mail delivered to the door. Only bills are shoved into the rusty metal box downstairs. But there it was, an envelope, taped carefully. My name written in neat black ink. Rachel Turner. My chest tightened. I peeled it off, hands trembling, and tore it open. Inside was a simple note, scrawled in bold letters. "Your rent is paid. JC." And tucked behind it, the stamped receipt from the landlord's office. Paid. In full. My knees gave out. I sat hard on the floor, the note shaking in my hands. For a moment, I thought it was a cruel prank. But when I saw the name, JC, my breath froze. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't family. It was a name whispered in Columbus like a legend. D.D., James Caldwell. The Billionaire. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, maybe hours. Emily tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy, what does it mean?" I smiled weakly, brushing her hair back. "It means we're okay. For now." But inside, my mind raced. Why him? Why us? How did he even know my name? I couldn't answer. But one thing was certain. For the first time in months, the crushing weight on my chest eased. That week, I did something I hadn't done in months. I bought Emily a pair of brand new sneakers, pink, with glitter along the sides. When she tried them on, she twirled in the mirror, her face glowing. "Mommy, I look like a princess." My throat tightened. Yes, I thought. For once, you do. At the diner, I walked with my head a little higher. The bills at home were stacked neatly, but the fear wasn't choking me anymore. I had room to breathe. And in that space, something new took root. Resolve. It started with Maya, a coworker at the diner. She had always been kind, but I'd kept my distance, too ashamed to let anyone close. One slow evening, she slid into the booth across from me. "You've been different," she said softly. Lighter. What happened? I hesitated, then showed her the note. Her eyes widened. "Rachel, this is huge." I nodded. "But I don't know what it means." She leaned closer, her voice firm. "It means someone believes in you. Don't waste it." Her words lit a spark. I started writing everything down. Every bill, every payment, every word my landlord said. No more silence. No more letting things slip away into memory. I filled pages with details, dates, times, and amounts. If anyone tried to twist my story again, I'd have proof. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing. A week later, Mr. Green cornered me in the hallway again. "Nice little miracle you got," he sneered. "Guess even broke girls get lucky sometimes." I stared at him, steady now. "My rent is paid. You don't get to talk to me like that anymore." He blinked, thrown off. I stepped past him without another word. My hands shook afterward, but inside, I was glowing. It was small, but it was a victory. The laughter that once haunted me? I started hearing it differently. Not as knives cutting me down, but as fuel. Every whisper, every smirk. They weren't proof of my weakness. They were proof of their cruelty. And cruelty, I realized, doesn't stay hidden forever. Because while I was rebuilding, while I was gathering strength in silence, the truth about my neighbors, my landlord, and even my family was starting to leak into the open. The same mouths that once laughed at me would soon choke on gossip. And all it took was one billionaire's name on a folded note. The thing about secrets is they never stay buried. And when they finally crawl into the light, it's never quiet. It's loud, messy, unforgiving. It started in the very building where they once mocked me. I overheard two women whispering in the stairwell, their voices carrying against the chipped concrete walls. "Did you hear? Rachel's rent. Paid in full." "By whom?" "They say Caldwell, the billionaire." The other woman gasped so loudly it echoed. "You're joking." "I'm not. Mr. Green confirmed it himself." My landlord's greed had betrayed him. He couldn't resist bragging. By the next day, everyone knew. When I walked into work, conversations froze, plates clattered, forks paused midair. Maya gave me a small, secret smile, but others just stared, their curiosity naked. A regular customer, Mrs. Parker, leaned across the counter. "Rachel, honey, is it true?" I set down the coffee pot, my hands steady. "What's true? That a billionaire paid your rent?" I didn't answer. I just smiled, calm, unreadable, and walked away. And that silence? That smile? It was louder than any confession. Of course, news travels fastest where it hurts most. Family. My sister called, her voice sharp. "Rachel, what's this I hear about you and some billionaire?" I laughed bitterly. "Funny, you only call when there's gossip." "Don't play coy," she snapped. "People are saying he left you a note. Why would he do that for you?" Her emphasis cut deeper than any insult. For you. As if I didn't deserve kindness. As if I'd stolen it. Maybe, I said softly, because I was worth it. She sputtered, furious. And for the first time in years, I hung up first. The shift was almost instant. The same neighbors who once mocked me now smiled too brightly. "Morning, Rachel. Need help with groceries?" Their kindness felt like vinegar, sour and stinging. Because I knew the truth. They weren't kind. They were afraid. Afraid that if a billionaire had noticed me, maybe their cruelty would have come to light too. But the most satisfying moment came at Emily's school. I arrived at pickup, coat buttoned tight against the biting wind. 2 mothers stood nearby, the same ones who once whispered about me. This time, they whispered again, but their tones were different. "She must know him somehow. Maybe she's smarter than we thought." One even smiled at me. "Rachel, dear, you'll have to tell us your secret." I looked her straight in the eye, my voice calm. "Funny. I thought you already knew everything about me." Her smile faltered. And I walked away, Emily's hand in mine, my head held high. But the real exposure came at church. Our small community church had always been the stage for my mother's pride and my sister's perfection. They sat in the front row, heads held high, while I lingered in the back, invisible. That Sunday, the pastor gave thanks to anonymous generosity that kept struggling families afloat. And someone, maybe Mr. Green, maybe one of the gossiping women, whispered loud enough for half the pews to hear. It was Rachel. Caldwell paid her rent. Gasps rippled through the sanctuary. Heads turned, eyes landed on me. I sat still, my palms pressed together, heat rising to my cheeks. But when I finally looked up, I didn't see pity. I saw envy, confusion, fear. My mother's lips tightened. My sister's face flushed red. Their masks were cracking, right there under stained glass windows. That's the thing about exposure. It doesn't just reveal the truth. It reveals people's character. The kind neighbor turned sour. The cruel sister turned desperate. The landlord turned cowardly. And me? For the first time, I turned steady. But whispers weren't enough. Not for me. Not after years of being their joke. I wanted more than whispers. I wanted confrontation. And as fate would have it, the opportunity came faster than I expected. Because when power shifts, when masks break, the stage is set for the storm, and I was ready to bring it. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's quiet, careful. Like a chess game where every move is calculated, every silence deliberate. By the time whispers of Caldwell's note had spread through my neighborhood, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning. I stopped explaining myself. No more pleading. No more justifying. When neighbors asked how I knew him, I smiled. When coworkers speculated, I stayed silent. When the family pressed, I hung up. That silence unnerved them more than any answer could have. Because silence makes people fill in the blanks with their own fears. Even Emily noticed the change. One evening, as we sat eating spaghetti at the tiny kitchen table, she looked up at me with wide eyes. "Mommy? They don't laugh at us anymore." Her voice was soft and cautious, as if the words themselves might break. I reached across the table and squeezed her little hand. "They don't get to laugh at us ever again," I said. And I meant it. The first real test came from my landlord. Mr. Green knocked on my door louder than usual. When I opened it, he leaned against the frame, smug as ever. "Guess you've got friends in high places now." I stared at him, expressionless. "My rent's paid. That's all that matters." He chuckled darkly. "Careful, Rachel. People talk. They wonder what a man like Caldwell sees in a woman like you." My stomach twisted, but I didn't flinch. "Funny," I said. "They wondered the same thing about you, and now they know." His smirk faltered, and for the first time he backed away. The real confrontation, though, began at my mother's house. She insisted on a family dinner, calling it a chance to clear the air. The air in that house was never clear. It was thick, smelling of pot roast and tension, filled with years of unspoken cruelties. At the table, Melanie eyed me like I'd stolen something from her. "So, Rachel, how exactly did you get Caldwell to notice you?" Her voice was sugar-laced poison. The others leaned in, waiting for me to trip. I set down my fork and met her gaze. "Maybe he noticed what you never did, that I'm stronger than I look." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. My mother's lips pressed thin. Melanie flushed, gripping her wine glass too tightly. It wasn't shouting, it wasn't a fight, but it was the first time I'd turned their mockery back on them, and they didn't know how to respond. What surprised me most were the quiet allies that surfaced. At church, Mrs. Lopez, who'd once smiled at my struggles, pulled me aside. "I was wrong about you," she said softly. "You've endured more than anyone knows. Don't let them take that from you." At the diner, Maya whispered, "Keep your head high. They'll expose themselves without you lifting a finger." Their words weren't weapons. They were anchors, reminders that not everyone was against me. By February, the stage was set. The gossip had built into a storm. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me. Not mocking now. Watching. Waiting. Even Melanie's husband asked questions at a family birthday party, his voice low. "If it's true, what else don't we know about Rachel?" And that was when I realized the same family who mocked me for having nothing was now terrified that I had something they couldn't control. The tension was a drumbeat in the background of every day. It grew louder, harder, until I knew it couldn't go on forever. They had pushed me into silence for years. Now, I was the storm pressing at their walls. And when the final confrontation came, when the laughter finally died, it wouldn't be in whispers or speculation. It would be in front of everyone. And I was ready. It happened at Melanie's anniversary party. Her big, perfect celebration. White tablecloths, champagne flutes, neighbors invited, family gathered, all of them dressed in their finest. I wasn't supposed to be there. She hadn't wanted me. But my mother insisted. "Family shows up," she said. Family. The word had always been a cage for me. I walked in wearing my plain black dress, Emily's hand in mine. The room hushed. Eyes turned. I could feel the weight of their whispers pressing down on me like the ceiling was caving in. During the toast, Melanie raised her glass high. "To love, loyalty, and family," she declared. I almost laughed. Loyalty. From the same mouths that once mocked me. That's when I noticed the smirk. My landlord, Mr. Green, was standing near the bar, whispering to a cluster of neighbors. The smirk I'd seen too many times. Something in me snapped. I set my glass down, stood tall, and said, "Funny. Family didn't care much about loyalty when they laughed at a single mom struggling to keep the lights on." The room froze. Forks clinked against plates. Gasps rippled. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled an envelope from my purse, the same one that had been taped to my door weeks before. "This," I said, holding it up, "is what stopped their laughter. A note. From James Caldwell." Murmurs spread like fire. Faces shifted. Shock, disbelief, and fear. Mr. Green's smirk faltered. Melanie's wine glass trembled. My mother's face went pale. "While you mocked me," I continued, voice strong, "a stranger saw my worth. A billionaire paid my rent. Not because I begged, not because I was weak, but because he saw what you refused to see." I laid the note on the table for everyone to see. And then, calmly, I spoke truths I'd kept buried for years. How Mr. Green had tried to corner me. How neighbors gossiped loud enough for Emily to hear. How the family laughed at shoes too worn, meals too thin, and lights too dim. The room shifted from smug laughter to stunned silence. Whispers turned inward now, accusing, condemning. Not me, but them. I saw it in their faces. Shame. The cracks in their perfect masks are splitting wide open. Melanie tried to speak, her voice breaking. Rachel, you don't understand. No, I cut her off, steady. For the first time, I understand everything. I took Emily's hand and turned toward the door. Behind me, the room buzzed. Confusion, anger, shame, but no laughter. Not anymore. Outside, the night air was crisp, the stars sharp against the black sky. Emily looked up at me, her new sneakers sparkling under the lights. Mommy, she whispered, are we okay now? I bent down and kissed her forehead. Yes, baby. We're more than okay. We're free. And in that moment, I realized revenge didn't come from Caldwell's money. It came from standing in that room and refusing to be their joke ever again. They wanted me broken. They wanted me silent. But I was neither. They mocked me for being poor. They called me useless. They thought I'd always be the girl they could laugh at. But when the truth came out, when their cruelty was exposed, the laughter died. And in its place, silence. And I have never loved silence more. If my story touched you, don't let it fade into silence. Subscribe to Touch of Humanity to hear more voices like mine, and share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone.